That's Portland. I'm headed to Vancouver in Washington, not the other one in Canada. This is a story about airplanes, but it starts with a story about wood and heritage.
This journey began when I found my grandfather's World War I record at Ancestry.com.
We had known he served in World War I, but nothing more. It turns out he didn't go over there, but served here at home. When I mentioned the Spruce Squadrons, even in Washington, no one knew what I was talking about. It's pretty much a forgotten story of America in the First World War. We remember the songs, the doughboys and the dogfights. The early biplanes that fought in the skies were made of wood, and spruce was the best wood for building airplanes. You've heard of the spruce goose? Same thing. Cutting the old trees, shipping them by rail and by river to the millworks at Fort Vancouver, where a sprawling facility had been built to lumber the wood and build planes.
Lumber cutting in the Northwest was essentially nationalized, and civilians worked alongside the soldiers in the effort to build an air force from scratch.
It was massive. A fort had guarded the West here since 1824. The wood operations have long been swept away, but the former office quarters remain on Officers' Row, facing the parade ground. The oldest building is the Grant House, the first military headquarters in the Northwest. Ulysses S. Grant served at Fort Vancouver, but he didn't live here. They named it for him after he got famous.
It was turned into a restaurant.
And the Marshall House, where General George C. Marshall did live in the 1930s when he was base commander. The last buildings from the Spruce era remaining are the hospital and a barracks which once housed African-American buffalo soldiers from earlier frontier days. The story of the Spruce Squadrons is found in the Pearson Field Air Museum, in a former hangar of the base airfield, a National Historic Site. Here you can find a few key vintage planes from the era, from the pre-war aircraft based on the Wright brothers' design, one of the only 12 surviving DH-4 Liberty planes built by the thousands and the only American plane to fly in Europe, and the familiar Curtiss JN-4, the Jenny. And you can learn some flight principles. But more unique is an exhibit of one of the tent huts which housed the soldiers and civilians of the Loyal Legion of Loggers and Lumbermen. A remarkable scale model of the Vancouver Barracks camp and lumber mill, down to meticulous detail as it once stood in 1918, takes up a corner of the museum. Now the only remnant airfield building of the era is the original hangar next to the museum, and it's all part of the National Park Service. Go and see it.